Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. Next episode in Back to Basics, episode 3. If you haven't watched the other two, I highly recommend them. We got the Defending with Demos, and we have the deck construction, the CC deck construction. Yeah. And I think the reason we're doing this video next is really to tie well with that deck construction CC video. As well, we'll have a link to a really well-written article that Yuki wrote for Red Riot Games. And I highly recommend you both watch the video and then read the article. And then you'll have a really good grasp on how you can go about building a classic constructed deck for the upcoming ProQuest season. And so once you're done building your deck, you then come to this video and figuring out, how you want to actually, want to use it. And so we have Yuki on as our special guest for today, a bit of a mainstay on the channel because everyone loves Yuki. I mean, it's just common knowledge here. And so we have Yuki back for our Back to Basics video. Say hi, Yuki. Say hi to the fans.
Hey everyone, pleasure to be on as always. I'm excited about this topic. I think there's a lot of good stuff.
A lot of good topics in this topic. A lot of good subtopics. And I'm joined always by my co-creator, co-commentator, co-compatriot, Mr. Rob.
Hey everybody.
And so we're gonna jump right in here with a very like overarching kind of idea, which Yuki actually brought up. I'm not gonna take any credit for this one, guys. This was Yuki's idea, which is about whenever you start preparing for a big event, be it ProQuest, Pro Tour, calling, what have you. You need to. Time is a finite resource. So think of time as a resource, just like you think of your life and Flesh and Blood as a resource. You only have so much of it, right? People have different commitments, people have families, jobs, what have you. There is only so much time you can use towards different facets of the actual tournament preparation. It's not just prepping your deck, but it's prepping your entire experience. As weird as that sounds, at least that's how I see it. And so setting up expectations is a kind of key pillar that people should be thinking about when entering a really big event, especially a long event, because for a lot of people that have played games like Magic the Gathering and even Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, things like that, or even bigger tournaments, these are very, very long tournaments that it takes a certain amount of conditioning to be able to figure out what you need to be doing during these tournaments to stay fresh, to stay on your toes, especially for things like for like the Canadian Nationals or any national championships that we had prior. This event is 9 rounds on day 1 and 6 rounds if you want to win the event on day 2, meaning you're playing between
probably 12 and 15 hours roughly.
Yeah, you're playing a lot of hours, and these are like full-fledged games here. And so I think conditioning is also a very big part of these tournaments. Making sure you eat, making sure you drink. It sounds super basic, but like nobody thinks about it when you get that headache at like 4 p.m. on like when you start the event. Even when I was at the Canadian Nationals as like a preset, I remember we didn't start eating lunch until like
I think it was like after 1:30 or 2 on day 1.
No, it was later than
not
that.
Even?
It was like 3:30.
Oh,
it was
really?
Like 3:30. No breaks, no coffee, no nothing. Like they gave us the pizza, which was fine. I'm not trying to like
that's what I was
on them or anything like that.
Yeah, the pizza. Yeah.
But like if you're not prepared for like things to go wrong, like a non-normal lunch hour, things like that, you will tank the rest of your day. Like you will struggle. Your brain will just stop functioning correctly. And this happens to everyone. And so conditioning is a big part of it. And I mean, Yuki played the whole thing because she eventually just won. So I think Yuki would be a great person to ask about how do you budget your time generally? Do you set up expectations at the beginning and stick by them? How kind of rigid are they? I'm curious what you kind of think your template is.
Yeah, so going into things, I usually try and kind of take an inventory of how much time I have. So for example, ProQuest is coming up. It's about a month out, at least until the start of ProQuest. So right now I have a testing team. We meet twice a week for, get about 3 games each session. So that's like, there's 4 weeks, that's 8 sessions, 3 games, that's 24 matches. So you can kind of trick yourself and be like, well, I have a whole month to prepare, but realistically it's 24 games. Half those games I'm going to be helping people test, whatever gauntlet deck they want to be playing against. So like realistically, I kind of have 12 games with my testing group where I can really dig into matchups that I want to do. And that's not a lot, right? Like that's a lot less than it sounds initially. So I think you need to kind of figure out like, where do I want to spend that time? Maybe that Levia matchup is, something that I can just think about in my head and sort of rely on my theory, and then I can focus in on whatever I'm expecting, whether that's, like Bravo or Prism or Viserai or whoever, right? But really kind of spending that wisely. In terms of expectations, I usually try and I usually have a goal I would like to top 8, but my biggest goal going into event is just trying to play my best. And as long as I feel like I've made good decisions, I'll be happy, because ultimately, you need the right pairings, you need a lot of things to go your way.
Yeah, there is some luck involved there, right?
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like nobody wins an event without getting lucky, right? Even my nationals win, I think I got quite fortunate to just dodge Oldhim in the top 8. Had Demos won his quarterfinals, I probably wouldn't be the national champion. So there's a lot of things that are out of your control, and just focusing on what you can control, I think, is a great way to avoid kind of that disappointment and that burnout and fatigue.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah.
And I agree with Eric that when you're going into an event, I always like to have something that I can eat, whether that's muffin, granola bar, fruit,
box of cereal,
just a box of Fruit Loops at your station.
Yeah, but you usually want to have something that you can eat, and lots of water, and like Eric said, just making sure you're hydrated, making sure you're eating it. It really matters, and ideally, even you might not feel hungry, but you want to make sure that you're doing that, because sometimes by the time you realize you're thirsty or you're hungry,
it's too late by then.
Yeah,
once you have the headache and you don't have the Advil, that's it. Your next hour is gonna
the headache's hard to get rid of without the Advil. It's it comes, but even if you drink after it, it'll take some time to go away. So gotta preemptively prevent it.
I too wish it were instant. No, that's a fair point, and I think that's very, very important to when testing, to actually stay within certain time restraints, which it sounds a little bit odd when you think about it. Why would I be timing myself playing a deck? But in reality, if you're playing 6 rounds of CC and every single one of your games is going to time, you're going to struggle a lot more than someone who's finishing their games in 20-30 minutes. Why? They get to go to the washroom, they get to drink water on the side, they get to walk around and scout opponents. This is actually key time that you can use to help your next matchups. You can sit there at top tables, usually at most events, and spectate from a distance. You can know what they're playing. You can get very valuable information. And so it's actually quite nice to be able to prep with time constraints, which is kind of the second subtopic I kind of just thought of really randomly here, that I definitely didn't consider as much going in, and it hurt me a little bit on the second half of CC when all my games were going to fatigue, just because that's how the matchups, that's what Gem was giving me, and so that's what I had to play into. But I think that's also another consideration, kind of going with your prepping your time. It's not just your time when you're prepping your deck, it's also your time when you're playing your match. And so I kind of, that's two different sides of the same coin here. But I think rolling into the actual deck itself. So in Classic Constructed, there's a couple ways that you can go about prepping your deck, as Yuki already mentioned, with your testing partners, with your testing group, playing games, playing matchups. It's one way to kind of think about it. But I think there's also the kind of switching in cards, kind of teching for different matchups. So it's kind of two. It's getting comfortable with your deck by putting a bunch of reps in, and then fine tuning your deck with a bunch of cards depending on the matchup, right? So I'll probably throw this to both Rob and Yuki. When you're looking at testing a particular CC, prepping for a tournament, so you're testing your deck, are there any important kind of points in a classic constructed tournament, say ProQuest for instance, that are on your mind when you're actually preparing and testing?
Yeah, I mean, I could start with my own small input here, but basically you kind of want to get a scope of what decks you're going to struggle against. I think predominantly your sideboard kind of does gravitate more heavily towards your tough matchups, I would say. The ones that you have a good like 60% chance of winning, that's probably due to your core deck anyway. So your sideboard kind of is mostly geared towards your tough matchups. There are a few matchups that you just can't sideboard against, just because either you just can't pack enough null rune for wizard, or it's just
you just take the L.
You just take the L. Like I think there are a few matchups where you just have to tell yourself, I'm against it, I just got unlucky and can't do anything about it, right? So that was my case for wizard. So I do think that focusing on the matchups that you at least can tech towards and are more difficult for you make more sense. Especially when it comes down to not just theory, but actually needing to practice against certain lines, or you get a certain hand and you have to figure out like if they do this, what should I do? So I think gameplay in those scenarios makes the most sense. As Yuki mentioned before, the theory can be applied to certain decks that you kind of know what they're going to do in general, and there isn't much practice involved. So in CC, I think the big consideration that is differentiated from Blitz is that you have a sideboard and you have to kind of practice enough to get your sideboard right, and that's pretty much what I focus on the most when I practice for tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I'm working on that sideboard or when I'm tweaking things, I'm often trying to pay close attention to like how I feel about the cards in my hand when I draw them, and like especially if it's a card that I'm curious about, but even just all my cards, I might go like, how are these cards in my hand? Like, do I feel good when I draw them? I'm like, yes, I have, 3 of a kind. That's amazing. Like, of course that's a good card, but sometimes you might be surprised. Like you'll have this card and you just go, like, this is not great. Like, this is not
why
the card that I want here. Yeah. And if that's like one time and most of the time it's great, then sure. But if you keep drawing it and you keep going like, this is not what I want, that's a really good sign that like maybe you should be replacing that with another card. And similarly, it kind of helps you identify those key cards, right? Like often there's a few key pieces in a matchup that, like if I'm against Ranger, maybe I should hold on to Command and Conquer and be willing to take even more damage to throw it back. Or if you're on Viserai under control, like that, the Rune Blood Barrier and the Read the Runes are like really key cards. Or like Bravo, like often your Crippling Crush can be like a way to pivot and take tempo. So kind of looking for those recurring play patterns and those kind of like key points in the game where tempo shifts or where you kind of take over and what that looks like, I think is really some of the key things that I look for.
And also identifying those key patterns helps you save time in the match as well, because you don't have to think as hard when they do come up, right? It's kind of like you got the reps and you know exactly what you need to block with and what you can play.
Yeah, like I guess a great example is lately I've been messing around with Viserai a little bit, and just knowing like what you're looking for when you're trying to go off with Sonata is huge. Like in this matchup, I want like minimum 12 rune chance. If I have a Mordred Tide, maybe I can get away with 10 because Mordred Tide's amazing. Obviously I need the Sonata, but maybe if I'm against Prism, I really want to make sure I have Rattlebones so that I don't get stonewalled by Arclight Sentinel, or I want that non-attack to go with my creepers. So there's like a specific hand that you're looking for often, and it's the same for other decks, right? Like Katsu has his, Surging Whelming combo line with like something to push it over the top. Like there's usually something you're looking for, and knowing what that really good hand looks like kind of helps inform like, okay, this is a turn where I should probably be trying to take damage to get tempo back.
To pivot,
Yeah.
You don't want to be going into the event and being like, well, what are the best? What do my best hands look like? I'm not sure.
What are my lines?
This hand's okay. I don't know. Like, do I keep this one? Like, you should know how good that hand is in the context of your deck and the matchup.
Having the numbers crunched beforehand helps a lot to know what's your potential damage output. Because if you're looking at some damage coming to you, it's like, well, can this hand outpace them? Right? It takes practice and it takes some memorization as well to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. I think we also touched on them in the defending episode where we were talking, where Demos was explaining like, okay, this card blocks for 3, but how much can I come back with?
When the actual numbers
come in. What is the actual value?
Yeah.
What is the actual value of the card? And I think that's that's something I want to dive a bit deeper on. I like to call it hand rating, which sounds a little bit weird, but like what I like to do in CC is I like to rate my hands, and I like to rate the cards in my hands based on what they're good for, what matchup they are, and if they are core versus side. Core meaning, a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but like essentially the cards that never come out on the deck. Like if this is a card that's not supposed to be coming out of a deck and it feels kind of meh at the moment, maybe it's not a core card, right?
Yeah.
And so for the tournament prep part, what I like to do is not only in different matchups, of course, testing as many matchups as you reasonably can, of course, as Rob and Yuki mentioned. Kano is one of those like insta L's for just a lot of, unless your Prism or something like that. It's usually just a hard matchup to.
It's like really the only matchup that you need more than one null rune, really, unless you want to be blocking the Rosetta. But it's pretty much the only condition. Yeah.
But even then, justifying like 2-3 null rune, if your equipment doesn't inherently already have arcane barrier, is quite difficult to justify for like 5 Kanos in a big tournament or something like that. It's just a matter of like, if Gem is unlucky enough if you're unlucky enough that Gem just gives you the Kano, then
it wasn't your tournament.
It's happened to me. It's happened to other people. Sometimes Guy's just waiting around the corner and you can't stop him.
Guy and Mike.
That's exactly what happened to me at National.
Oh, it happened.
Guy and he just smushed me.
Yeah.
The problem is it happened to me round 3, and that's not what I needed him to smush me. I needed him to smush me in round 9.
Had to happen later.
Anyways, so like I definitely when you're prepping, don't feel compelled to prep against every single matchup. There are so many heroes. The meta,
realistically, you can't do it.
Yeah. The meta now is so varied too. So it's like you can't really get through all of them. And so, finally, kind of looking at that hand rating comment, I think the other point that Yuki and Rob mentioned were knowing your attack lines, and going to time in a tournament feels really, really, really bad. It just feels kind of like a lot of the times you're sitting there, and I think attitude is kind of what I'm trying to get at here. And so resetting yourself after, like, let's say you draw, it's considered a double loss in Fab. So it's really kind of a bit heart-wrenching. I had a draw. I was actually 4-1 in the proquest on the next day, and I ended the tournament on a draw. Actually, no, I had a draw kind of in the middle somewhere, and that draw essentially bumped me out of top 8. And it's a matter of like perspective. So you need to understand, if you happen to be prepping for a tournament and you keep going to time, or you keep trying to get faster but just not working, you need to identify that earlier rather than later, depending on what deck you're playing. If you're a particularly a player that has an affinity for a certain type of deck, like if you're a very good control player and then you're trying to learn this aggro deck to bring to a tournament, knowing your attack lines are a lot more important in an aggro deck than they are in a control deck, because your strategy is completely different. And as a control player, your time is taken on the defense, whereas an aggro player, your time is taken on the offense. That's the main usage of time, like a 75. I'm putting random numbers out there, but it's a majority. Your split is just based on like how you maximize your attack versus how you maximize your value for defense. It's 2 very different things. And so if you're bringing yourself to time a lot, that's something you need to identify super early and figure out what is the source of that. Is it you don't know your attack lines as well, as Yuki was mentioning? Is this hand good? Is this where I need to pivot? Or like Rob is mentioning, is this the card I'm bringing into the sideboard? Do I bring it in immediately and use it in this situation? You need to know that. You need to prep in a way that you know that kind of immediately, really, because you really don't have time to waste in these big kind of tournaments. And that the other part that I want to add for CC in general before we move on is that the attitude is a big factor in my mind, especially when people lose round 1. It's so gut wrench. It's so I haven't I think I've lost a round 1 at some point, maybe a Rhodes or something like that. It's very, very bad.
It's hard to come back from that too.
It's really hard to come back. But a nice example is Oliver, who top 8'd, actually lost round 1. So he actually just got really unlucky playing into, I think, Briarmere. I think he might play into Donkey or something like that, one of our other locals. And he just started the day as 0-1. And I remember he was telling me that he had to like exit the room, kind of breathe in, breathe out, like stay like breath, you need to stay calm. A lot of people who have not gone to one of these big tournaments will, like, tilting is super common. Like people get like tilt out of their mind and they just get super angry to themselves, maybe to their opponent or whatever. Like, oh, I got super unlucky, everything hates me, whatever. It's very, very important to course correct earlier rather than later. And so prepping it sounds weird, prepping your attitude, but it's really just prepping your mindset to be really focused on, hey, if I happen to lose, I need to, like, I'm not out of contention yet. You need to like take a step back, remember your game plan. you got a bit unlucky, but everyone gets a bit unlucky sometimes.
Yeah, I
Not
mean
even-
the
not
mental. Now that you mentioned the
Yeah.
mental, right? In esports is an example where they actually have like psychologists
Mental
on
boom,
scene.
yeah.
They have people
Yeah.
there to help out the players because it's so taxing to play for X amount of hours per day. Under constant duress because it's like whether you're playing an FPS or like a MOBA or something, like it's a lot of just on the spot thinking. Same with card games, right? Maybe not as like as like crazy, but the mental is an important factor, and you really have to pay attention to it before going into an event, right? Like make sure you have the food and water, and make sure that you do really be conscious of it, because it will eat you up subconsciously if you're not paying attention. So very good point.
Yeah, people just don't go XO in a lot of these tournaments. Like people very rarely, like maybe one or two people will ever just go XO in one of these big tournaments. I actually want to ask Yuki very quickly here. How was your mental during that? It's just out of curiosity. I mean, you definitely, I know you did very well in draft, but you were at XO and CC. So how were you able to kind of rejig yourself after those kinds of losses to bring yourself back up to like a winning mentality?
Right. So I actually lost round 2 to Gi on Kano, which is obviously not where you want to be. But again, like kind of going into the event, I had kind of done the math, and I knew that if you're X3, you're locked for top 8. And often knowing that's kind of nice, and just understanding like you're gonna lose some rounds. It's probably gonna happen. Like New Zealand Nats just happened. Everybody lost rounds in that event. Matt Rogers, Nick Holding, everybody who made the top 8 lost. Nobody was XO. So, obviously the later you lose, the better, but just understanding that like you have a few games to give, I think is helpful.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason it kind of ties into my goals going into an event is just to play well and make sure that I'm making good decisions as much as possible. And if I ever catch myself like getting tilted either because I lost or maybe because I made a really bad play, and I'm just like, oh, that was a misplay, that was so stupid, I try and kind of recenter and be like, well, what do I do from here? Like, how do I get back into this game? How can I, like, that's happened, focusing on it's not going to help me. What do I need to do to win this game, or to win my next game, so that I'm able to be in this? And going into day 2, I was X and 3 already. I knew I had to win out. I had to go 3-0 in order to top 8, and that's a lot of pressure. But just kind of taking it one step at a time. I'm gonna draft the best deck that I can draft. I'm gonna just play really tight, make good decisions, and that's kind of all you can do, right? Like you might win, you might lose, but if you make the best decisions then you'll be giving yourself the best odds possible, and that's kind of what you're going for. So just kind of focusing on that like step by step and just trying to play clean. For me, that's like a way to kind of take the pressure off in a way. Like especially in top 8, I was just like, I'm gonna be very intentional, announce all my triggers, do everything in order, like double check.
Judges are watching you. Be cool. Yeah, everyone be cool.
Just play really clean, and that's kind of all you can do, right? Like if you feel like you've made good decisions, then there's no regrets. And,
and this really ties into what you were talking about earlier about just really focusing on things that you can control, right? You can control your turn, you can control how you block, how you attack, right? But focusing on things that have passed or things that are to come that involve luck, I think don't make much sense for your mental. So it's a very good point.
Yeah, I think we've gone a little bit into CC here, a little bit into setting up your expectations, your mindset, trying to keep everything calm and collected. So where that goes out the window is draft, because really your tournament prep for draft varies so widely depending on so many different factors, to the point where it is definitely the parallels between that and CC in my mind are very, very non-existent. Like there is very, very short list of things that really carry over in our Venn diagram of tournament prep here, right? And so for draft, I guess I'll start off a little bit. I think ProQuest was sealed, so that was a little bit different. We're not going to be talking too much about sealed. I think that's a bit of a more rare tournament structure. However, I think for sealed, it's really deck building in general is more of the skill that you need, because there's really no other piece there, because there's no luck as far as what people are passing you and sign reading and things like that. Yeah. It's whatever you get is what you get. So it's a lot more,
I would say it's even more luck than it is skill based. It's just you have your six packs.
You get 6 packs. Definitely how I felt. I think when I'll talk a little bit about sealed, just a little bit in case it's a thing. So in the pro, because I know Yuki didn't. She didn't need to go
yeah, that's right.
And I don't know if I don't remember if Rob was in the pro class.
I think
you might have made. You were in the pro class. Okay,
yeah.
you could talk a little bit about sealed too. So I ended up opening. I was actually across from Quebec Eric, which was really funny. Like we were checking each other's lists, and when I was opening his cards and looking at his cards, I'm like, this man has an amazing old him list, and I was so jealous. Anyways, I opened Briar essentially, so I was quite mixed, and I had 3 very average pools for Old Him, Lexi, and Briar, and I was just like, wow, these are all incredibly average. Like there was no key Majestics. No, I had a Sting of Sorcery, which is not a signal to go Briar.
Yeah, honestly.
It's not. It's no. Okay, but it's not anything to write home about. It's a decent card, but not a deck builder card kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's not like Channel Lake or like Oakenold or something like that. Yeah. And I had very average pool across the board. I was counting generally my approach to seal is count your element cards first. Count your earth, count your, this is for tails. Just, this does change based on the thing. Yeah. Count your resource / element. So I consider the element cards the resource cards because they're mainly for fusing. Yeah. So count all your element cards. Do you have more strong earth cards? Do you have a lot of earth blues? Maybe Oldhim is your choice. Do you have a lot of lightning blues? Maybe Lexi Briar is your choice. A lot of different kind of resources. Count how many actual resources you have. Blue cards, red cards, and yellow cards. And then count your power cards. Your power cards are the ones that are going to turn the tempo, the ones you take damage for, the ones that you really, really want in the hand to finish the game. And then you count your auxiliary cards. And I count the auxiliary cards as something like reactions, lightning press, sigil of sufferings, things like that take the edge off. Like you could actually steal a win here and there, which I actually ended up stealing a win off a sigil of suffering. Like in one of the earlier rounds, it felt super great. He wasn't very impressed, but I felt very great once I won off a sigil of suffering. And so those are kind of the cards that they're not going to win you the game usually, but it'll be very, very important. Overall, that ended up being an extremely average Briar deck because Briar doesn't need as many good cards to be a good deck, whereas Lexi is complete opposite. I feel like Lexi is the one where you need a good pool to have a good Lexi deck, period. Yeah. I had 1 yellow Overflex, and that's it. So Lexi was off the board, period. Had like 1 Chilling Ice Fate. It was not that good. And Oldhim, I was lacking the blue earth cards. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that. My ice pool was decent, actually, which is why I actually kind of considered Oldhim. But having a good ice pool, in my view, was not nearly as important as having a good earth pool in Oldhim for the D-React, since that 2-block, especially for Rosetta Thorn, is extremely important to actually help you withstand that. And ended up taking the Briar. Very arcane based because I did have Sting of Sorcery, so I tried to deal a lot of Bramble Sparks, a lot of fusing, so it was like an earth with a little bit of lighting. So that's how generally I approach sealed, from like a resource power auxiliary kind of curve, and that generally works pretty well for me in sealed. Rob, I don't know how much it differs for you, but
I'm basically just going to echo your thoughts because like when you're going into sealed, it's a lot of cards at once. Actually, you're kind of looking at like a pile of cards, so you have to be quick in knowing which pools cards fit into, and then what pools lead you to what heroes. Like you said, earth and ice blues, for Oldhim, of course, because you're mostly going to swing with your hammer or like block or use your ability, right? And yeah, I think just identifying the pools and being able to put cards into pools quickly is a great skill for sealed.
Yep. No, I definitely think. And that's all we're going to talk about for sealed, because sealed totally depends on what set you're talking about. Like Tails is such a specific set, and so we're going to leave that alone. And we're going to move on to probably in my mind, the most difficult tournament preparation format there is, which is draft. And for draft, especially for our nationals, most of the nationals that were around that time, the only true way to learn how to draft is to draft a lot, draft the set a lot, which feels very like, yeah, Eric, obviously don't be dumb. That's obviously the way to learn. But it's not just drafting a ton of games, drafting a ton of tournaments. It's also how you draft, how you look at draft, and what you're trying to learn from draft. I think that's the key point, actually forcing yourself to learn as much as you can about things like signals are very important. It's like an acquired skill. I feel like very, very few people just come into the game and automatically know. They just kind of, a lot of newer players, they focus on, hey, I got this really strong card. Let's just build a deck, pack 1, pick 2.
Yeah.
And then I look at it and be like, that's not actually, it's an M, but it's like a force of nature or something like that. It's like, I don't think you're going to win off that force of nature, but maybe. But it's very, they look at, hey, this is a strong card for my own deck, and let's just leave it at that. And then they just get punished based on the fact that there's 2 Briars next to them and they didn't really realize it. Or there's a Briar, especially pack 1, pack 3, right? Because you're passing in the same direction. If that player next to you passing to you is in the same hero as you, you're in some dire straits here, because that's generally the idea, which is the first thing I want to talk about, is signaling, because this is something that I think Yuki can add a ton of value here, because she's obviously better at signaling than I am, because I am very stubborn. That's not the point.
I am too.
I generally, the draft portion I did play, I ended up going 2-1, which was okay, but signaling wasn't as much of an issue, because people were like, I think the people in my pod were kind of throwing up random cards at random times. The signals were all over the place. But in Yuki, it's a lot more relevant because she played more drafts. However, I think signaling is the first topic. What I mean by signaling is in your pod of 8. Generally, it'll be 8. Sometimes in your armory, it might be 6 or 7. But generally in a pod of 8, it's like the perfect pod. There will be 7 other players passing cards. And you'll be passing clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right, left, right, I think. And so
left, right.
Sorry,
yeah.
left, right, left. Yeah, clockwise is left. Sorry, I'm directionally challenged, and you should see me driving. And so the point is that for signaling, it's very important, first of all, in my view, to know what these people are drafting, or try to figure out by pack 2. So by pack 1, you'll know what the person who's passing to you is probably drafting, just based on what half of the pod is passing to them, right? Because you have 3 players plus them passing one direction, and you have 3 players on the other side passing directly to you on the other pack. And so what that ends up being is in pack 1, you focus on essentially what is your most likely pool of cards for the majority of the draft, pack 1 and pack 3, right? So I think the main point I'm trying to make here is that your pack 1 is actually more important than people give it credit for, because generally by pick, for me it's usually about pick 4 or 5, I'm almost always locked in. Sometimes I flex a bit for pick 2 and pick 3. So on the draft, I think in Nationals, my pack 1 pick 1 was actually a Turn Timber. It was a red Turn Timber, I believe, which is to me it was a very, very strong card. The pack in general was pretty weak. Red Turn Timber is never weak in Oldham. It's a very, very strong card. But my pack 1 pick 2 was a red Weave Lightning, and I'm like, oh god, I'm getting punished. But how could I be punished? They're both extremely strong cards. There were some other good cards in the pack, but red Weave Lightning wins games. That card will win you games. It's a very good card, very similar to like a Weave Ice. It will win you games. And so I picked up the Weave Lightning. A couple picks next, I see more and more Lightning cards, which was a signal to me that Briar is more open than Oldham, because I saw 1 blue Earth card in the next 4 picks, and that was very obvious. And the pod was actually 3 Oldhams. I actually played 3 Oldhams in that draft. I played Oldham into Oldham into Oldham, so I played all 3 of them. And so I was able to determine that Turn Timber is a hell of a drug, but Weave Lightning's a bit stronger. So that's kind of that's the only experience I could draw on. I only drafted I drafted like a side draft. That doesn't really count. So I think Yuki, as far as signaling goes, the Lexi Master herself here, it's a bit of a weird topic, but do you have any kind of advice for the people looking to, when they're prepping for the draft portion of their tournament, how to practice reading signals, how to practice reading signals and giving signals, which is also like a bit of a skill that could come in handy.
Right. So I think a lot of signaling comes down to your card evaluation and understanding like what an ideal version of each deck looks like, and keeping in mind like sometimes there might be multiple builds. Like Oldhim can be more like
Smackdown.
earth and defensive, or he can be more like often ice and aggressive,
Yeah.
or even earth and aggressive. But just understanding like what are the key cards for that, and seeing those premium cards getting passed to you is often kind of what we're looking for in signals. It's about the cards that you're seeing and sometimes the cards that you're not seeing. So, for example, Tails always has 2 commons of each class. It can have more if there's like foils and things like that, but there's always at least 2 of each class common. So sometimes if you notice a class common missing early, that can be a great signal. You go, well, there's only 1 Briar card here. And that does happen sometimes. Like people really like Briar and you're like, well, somebody picked Briar in the first like 1 or 2 picks. I don't really want to fight with them, so I'm gonna, steer more towards Oldhim or Lexi. So the pack collation is quite helpful. Another one is like, I think that a lot of players run into trouble where they latch on and they're like, well, on my 3rd pick, I got past a red Weave Lightning, so therefore Lightning has to be open, and I'm the Lightning drafter. And it's you're on the right track. That red Weave Lightning is a signal, but your signals are often like over a number of picks. And keep in mind that like just because there's a red Weave Lightning, like maybe there was a foil red Weave Lightning, or maybe there was like a Majestic in there of some sort, or maybe they took like a Ball Lightning or a Mark of Lightning. Like there's other Lightning cards they could have taken over it that would still be correct. And so, I'd probably take the Weave Lightning there. It's very good. And I'd probably go, okay, I got past a red Weave Lightning pack 3. What am I seeing pack 4? Is it more Lightning cards? Because if it is, that kind of reinforces that signal. It's like, oh, I'm getting a similar signal again. So that's I put more weight on that. Whereas if I go and I go, well, I got this red Weave Lightning, but there's not that much Lightning, I'm just going to take the strong card from the next pack. So that's a lot of like staying open, is just kind of often just taking the best card at the start of each pack. Like the first 4 picks, I'm usually just looking for power. I want the best card that I can get. And then I want to like give myself as many options as I can to bob and weave in the draft and adjust accordingly. Another thing that I'd really recommend for tournament prep is when it comes to those higher rarity cards, especially the Majestics, but even the rares, you don't get to play with them as much. Draft them really aggressively. I drafted, like the first time that I sat down and drafted, I was like almost first picking Frostlock and Light It Up. Not because I thought it was correct. I was almost certain that it was wrong. But I wanted to know how good those cards are. Right? Like if you look at a card and you're like, how good is this? If you played with it, it's a lot easier to evaluate. So often those M's, like any chance I get to play with it when I'm prepping, I'm gonna try and play with it and just get a feel for it. And you might learn that Light It Up is not very good. Like you'd probably just rather have a Frazzle. On the other hand, Blossoming Spellblade, that card is absurd, and I think that you can completely base your deck around that card and just win off of that card. It basically gives you the defensive Oldhim matchup all on its own. You can just win off the back of that card alone. So there's a wide range on these Majestics, and often like coming in with the perspective of I want to know how good these cards is rather than I want to win this draft is really important when you're preparing for a big event. It's more about the learning and the card interaction. Right?
I totally like echo that as far as like knowing the cards. I think the second point I want to like put on top of that is try your best to draft all the heroes from the set. I know there's some heroes like I really didn't like drafting Lexi. I'm gonna tell you, everyone knows this, but oh man, did I force it in some of these drafts, and that led me to understand what exactly I needed for Lexi in an actual scenario to make her as strong. And I realized that the card pool not only needed to just be good in general for Lexi in the pod, right? Because sometimes some boxes just don't have great Lexi cards in it, right? So I realized that you needed not only a good Lexi pool. If you were fighting with another Lexi, your chances were exponentially lower. Like being the only Lexi is miles better than the second or God forbid third Lexi. And so I realized that you needed X number of buffs, overflexes, ice quakes, things like that, because your dominate is not very good if your arrows are coming in for 5. That's just how it is. You need a lot of good arrow cards. Chilling Ice Vein is the best arrow card that you can grab effectively. Like, you'll get multiple copies. It's Chilling Ice Vein. It just is, right? And the sooner that you realize that in draft, the better it is in an actual situation where, hey, you happen to be in the very fortunate point of being the only Lexi drafter in your pod. Congratulations, but you've never played Lexi before.
Yeah.
So this is awkward for everybody as you stumble through a whole bunch of cards and hope that you're fusing the right ones. And so, I mean, that was, of course, the situation for Yuki, as explained on our check out those videos if you haven't already for a tournament recap and such. But that was the situation. She played a good chunk of Lexi, obviously, and she knew how to use it properly. But I would encourage people to try at least once. Try every hero at least once to get a feel for it, so that if you're in the situation where you're the only one drafting it, you can actually capitalize on it. Because I can't tell you how many times that I saw all these Lexi cards and I'm just like,
yeah,
I know deep down in my gut I want to grab this red overflex, even 2 red overflexes. And then I see 0 Chilling Ice Veins and I'm like, no, there's someone else on Lexi for sure. Like, I can see those major class cards are being taken, and it's just like, no, I don't want to fight over Lexi. And so I think it's kind of important to also look at the cards, like pick the cards, as Yuki said, those Majestics and things like that, to actually know if they are the pack one, pick one, like the pulses. In my view, like Pulse of Candlehood, not Pulse of Candle, Eisenloft. Pulse of Eisenloft. I'm building Oldhim. I'm probably building. It's too good of a card. Volhaven, less so, but still a very good card.
Yeah.
You won't know if there's such good cards unless you play with them. And so that's kind of the reason, if you combine snap picking different cards and then playing all the heroes combined, you'll have a good overall view to give you the tools that whatever you get. So as they say, pick your seat, but not pick your seat, draft your seat. What draft your seat means is essentially whatever is open in the seat, you've played everything, you have a good overall kind of view. Whatever is past you, you can play at least semi-effectively. Like, you don't have to be a god at Oldhim to play a mean Oldhim. You can just fatigue people out, right? And so it kind of really depends. I think the last point of draft that I just wanted to touch on briefly is that for other than the reps and the card picks and the signals and what have you, is that know the set you're drafting, at least to the point where you've looked at the card list. It seems really like an odd thing to say. It's like, why would you look at the card list if it's not like a constructed building, like as part of your prep? Like, why do you really need to know all the cards? The reason is that different sets have different power levels for different cards. Tails and Monarch have a lot more Majestics than Welcome to Wraith and Arc, which it seems a little bit weird. But if you happen to be drafting Welcome to Wraith or Arc, there's only 2 Majestics a box, and those Majestics are generally very powerful on average, whereas a lot of the Majestics and Tails are just,
you
know what I mean. And then Monarch, same idea, is like every time I saw a Levia Majestic in draft, I just shit it over to the
That's
left.
right.
It's just like Shadow of Blast Buffet. I'll take the common, thank you. I'll take the Rally the Rearguard Red, please, thank you. And so knowing the set in general and knowing the cards, even if you've never seen them before, at least read them, and you don't have to be sitting there like reading the card and then evaluating, because time is still of the essence, because you only think I get officially it's like 45 seconds or 55. I think they tell you when to pick and pass in these big events. And so practicing your timing and drafting is also important, which sounds a little bit strange because a lot of people just draft unlimited time, right? But actually at these higher level events, drafting is also timed. And so knowing the cards and a combination of all that is also quite important. And so I think we've kind of gone through CC and draft kind of.
I can add a little to draft.
Sure.
Yeah, I can add a little bit there. I agree that kind of emulating the circumstances you're going to be playing in is really important. So like maybe think about doing a time draft, or even more importantly, like practice not looking at your picks between. Like if you're starting out and you're just drafting the set the first time, I'll often look at my picks because I want to figure out like, what does my deck look like? What am I doing here? But when I'm getting closer to the event, I'm trying to emulate what I'm going to be doing. And same thing for CC. You were talking about like practice playing timed rounds. Same thing. You're trying to emulate what you're going to be doing. But back to draft, one of the things that I think really helps, that kind of ties in with Eric's idea of like knowing the set, is also having an idea of like if you're figuring out how to draft each hero, what does that deck look like? Like you should ideally have a rough sketch in your head. For example, for Lexi, I know that I want about 8 blues. I probably want around like 10 to 15 arrows with some good reds in there. I probably want about 6 or 7 pumps, and I probably want to have about like ideally 8 to 12 lightning cards. So some kind of mix like that. And then I kind of have an idea like, okay, well, of those, like there's not that many pumps. There's Overflex, and then most of the pumps are rares, like Weave and Icequake are rares. So those are actually like the highest priority is I need to get those pumps to be able to beat Oldham. And I have to prioritize those cards. And if I'm not seeing those cards, I'm not going to be able to draft Lexi. And you know, on the other side, if you look at Oldham, like a lot of Oldham decks want like 15 to maybe even 20 blues and a bunch of blue earth cards. And if you're not, so you have to prioritize those blues, right? You know, like half my deck has to be the blues. I need to get this count up there. So I need to take blues aggressively. They're not as replaceable because I need so many of them. And I think just like having a rough outline of like, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I need is super helpful, because then when you do get to that review stage of your draft after pack 1, you can kind of look through and go, well, I already have, like if I'm drafting Lexi, I already have 4 blues. I can probably pick up 4 blues somewhere. That's not going to be too hard. I don't really need to take good blues. I really need to be prioritizing, like maybe I need to get some more arrows. I only have 2 arrows. That's not great. I need to really focus on getting some arrows, and understanding what you're looking for and like what that deck looks like is super important. And I think this is where you can help your friends too. Like, if there's a hero I haven't drafted as much, but I know that somebody I'm testing with loves drafting that deck and does really well with it, I'll ask them, like, can I see your deck? And kind of lay it out and be like, what are the key cards? Like, what makes you want to get into this deck? What do you feel like the general composition is? What are you looking for when you're building this deck? And just like having a, like, of course you're not going to get the same deck every time, but having a kind of roadmap of where you're headed is huge, and one of the most important things you can do in drafting. And of course it's going to change. Like the more you draft the set, the more you might go, actually, like if I include more of this instead of this, that's better. And so you'll kind of like update your picture, your roadmap in your head. But I think that that's like one of the biggest things you can do. And anybody looking to kind of go next level with this is you can actually build these archetypes and kind of sketch them out for each deck. Be like, here's like the arcane damage briar, here's the earth damage briar, and just kind of list it out and build those archetypes, and even discuss it with a friend and see where do you agree, where do you disagree, and that can give you a great idea of like, here are the key cards. Here's what I'm looking for to get into that archetype. And that's what signaling is, right? Like you realize, like, I'm seeing all the cards that go into this deck, so I can probably get this deck. So yeah, the clearer an image you can have in your head of what you're trying to get towards, the easier it is to actually wind up there.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the key skills for draft, I think.
That's totally fair. Just use everything in your disposal, essentially. And it's a matter of... nobody knows everything to such a high level that it's going to be like, oh, they don't need help. They're just got at everything. But
and you're not expected to with the limited amount of time you have, right? It's more like you're focusing on a certain hero because you like playing that hero, and you're going to try the other ones. But you're likely going to have someone at the table who's an expert at a certain hero that you can kind of piggyback off of. And it's that collaboration that really helps you a lot, because you can't draft every hero 10 times, right?
No, it's fair. Like my main hero was Briar. I had at least 15 reps in draft Briar or something like that. And I had about 3 in Oldham and maybe 2 in Lexi. Just to know that if I was the only person, I would. Ended up taking mainly, I think I took Briar in draft kind of thing, just in general, because out of all the power levels, nothing was obvious, and that was the one I was most comfortable with, which is totally fine. It's just a matter of kind of combining those pieces together, and so I think we've given everyone a very nice template for their tournament prep. For their, I think they could use even the drafting for the upcoming Welcome to Wraith Invitational events. Feel free to use everything we've talked about for those events, for ProQuest events, for CC, Pro Tour events, whatever those look like. Might be another combination event. We're not going to really go into Blitz that much because the next skirmish season isn't for a little while, most likely. Blitz also has less prep that you can do, other than a lot of what the same things in CC minus the sideboard.
I mean, what I'll say is, Yeah, Blitz
Yes,
is basically like you build one small deck and make it do one thing very well, and just hope that that can overpower other decks. That's pretty much how Blitz goes.
Counter strategies aren't relevant if you don't have a sideboard. So you just kind of have your matchups, you know how to play them, and
but we can go into more detail later on once it becomes more relevant.
Yeah. So if people want like a super nice like Blitz, very similar Blitz one, we can do one. But for now, I think these are the big ones that people have been asking for, and people would appreciate the help on. So I hope everyone enjoyed that run through of the tournament prep with Yuki, of course, practicing very hard for the upcoming ProQuest season. I guess I'll call it. I'll call it the Pro season, because I guess the Pro Tour is also counting that in April.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you liked this content, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. If you like my my bootstrap Rob impression of I don't have a basement, but here's my unframed posters of Kasai and Benji. Feel free to also like, comment, and subscribe. I will get frames eventually.
Fundraiser for Eric to get some frames.
Go fund me for some frames. That would be pretty funny. If anyone has any suggestions about ways to improve the videos, or any suggestions on what kind of topics they're looking for in the future, sooner rather than later, we're going to try to push out. Our February schedule is getting a bit packed, but we'll try to fit in everything that people kind of request. Feel free to take a look at our Spotify. This video will be on the audio transcribe will be on Spotify for people who prefer to listen to this just the audio version. Also, feel free to check out our Twitter for any announcements such as that. And so with that, appreciate everyone who's watched this video as long as they did. It really warms my analytics and my heart, everything combined. And so with that, everyone have a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. Bye for now.
See ya.